can't condone clowns.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today we are looking back at all 9 games from Monday in the NBA, lots of stuff happening there, and then previewing 4 games for Tuesday. Michael Bolton.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed. Let's start with the first game of the day. The Indiana Pacers go down to the Clippers at home, 110-99. No Kawhi Leonard dealing with his knee issue. Paul George went bananas. 36 minutes, 36 points, 7 triples, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals and a block. Didn't shoot all that well, but 38% usage, a huge night from George. Paddy Beverly also stepped it up, 11 and 12 with 5 assists and 3 steals. Shot the ball really well. That has been an issue for him all season, but he can find a spot on a 12-team roster. It doesn't have to be yours. He's not a must-roster guy, but he should probably be on someone's roster in one of those leagues. Ivica Zubac was great here. Now, previously when Leonard had sat out, we'd seen less minutes from Zubac, more from Harrell, but Zubac played well, 13 and 8 with a block. He can be a 12-team guy under the right circumstance, but the ceiling is obviously really, really low. But he can help your boards, your field goal percentage. You can get a couple of blocks in there. While the table, 26 and 8, nice bounce back from Harrell in 30 minutes. It wasn't a bounce back for Lou Williams, who was real bad. 6 points on 2 of 19 shooting. He did have 6 assists. Now, I did say that I was looking at him as a sell high guy before Paul George arrived. I was looking at him to drop off, but not to this level. Like, this is obviously at the extreme level of the downside of Williams' value. But over the last 2 weeks, he's the 179th ranked player. He's now fallen outside the top 100 over the course of the season. And I think this level where he currently is not far off where he's going to be the rest of the season. His usage is at 29 for the year, but it's at 27 over the last 2 weeks. That's a more realistic number for him. Now, his shooting numbers will probably come back up because he's at 34% over the last 8. But this is a little bit more of what I expect from Williams as we move forward. Mo Harkless, a lot of minutes again. The 14 boards are nice. The 1 block is nice. 35 minutes here. His minutes are ramping up, but he's not enough to be a 12-team league guy. While someone called Derek Walton Jr. played 19 minutes in this game. 3 points for him, with both Magruder and Shamet also out and JaMychal Green sidelined too. So lots of injury problems with the Clippers, but they still get the big victory at the end. For the Pacers, Myles Turner, it is real rough for Myles Turner at the moment. 25 minutes here only. He wasn't in foul trouble. He just wasn't good. 5 and 5 with 3 assists and a block, 2 of 9 shooting. Now, I got a lot of shit in the offseason for saying, Myles Turner, if the blocks aren't there at that really, really high level they were last season, he's going to have a bad year and he's going to be overdrafted. Well, so far he's the 83rd ranked player after being 32nd last year, 90th over the last month, and that's with the blocks actually being there. He's at 2.4 versus 2.7 last season, but the shooting numbers are way off, 49 down to 42. His rebound numbers are non-existent. His usage is in the toilet. It is not working for him playing next to Domantas Sabonis, and even with those block numbers being almost comparable to last season, he is struggling to remain a 12-team league guy. Now, he is a 12-team league guy, and he probably is, in general sense, I'd go, this is a bit of a buy low. I'm not actually sure it is. Now, I am sure that he can be better than a 40% shooter, which is what he's been over the last month, so that can improve, but I'm not looking for the rebounds or the usage numbers to actually improve from Turner here. So while he's a buy low, he's a mild buy low, and if someone's really frustrated, because he's one of these players that people get really, how can you be 7 foot and not grab any rebounds? So people get really pissed. So throw your worst player at him. Throw your Pat Beverleys. Throw your Ivica Zubac, throw anyone, whoever's your worst guy is, and see if you can get him. But he's not that much of a buy low, because I just don't know how these other numbers are going to be able to bounce back. Dougie McDirt got hot, 17 points in 30 minutes with 5 triples. Relying on him is a fool's errand, while Brogdon had 20 points with 2 steals and 2 assists. Tony Warren Jr., when the shot doesn't fall, the numbers always look barren. 12 points with 8 boards, no threes, no assists, 1 steal. Normally he is better than that. I worry when your game is so predicated on usage that when a high usage guy comes back, like Oladipo, that he's going to cop a bit of a hit. While Jeremy Lamb struggled also, 12 points on 12 shots in 24 minutes, still is a guy that remains as a rosterable player. The next game that we take a look at here, we had the Boston Celtics. They just smacked the Cleveland Cavaliers. Jordy Clarkson had 26 minutes, 19 points. He'll occasionally have these games, and he'll occasionally play 20 minutes. He's really, really hard to rely upon. He's just a flyer, dart throw type of guy for 14-team leagues as a stream option. While Chetty Osman was pretty poor, 4 points in 24 minutes. Kevin Porter stepped up for him, 9-2-2 with 3 steals and a block. Look, I can see Porter starting games this season. I can't see him being a must-roster top 100 sort of a guy. There are too many holes in his game, but he's looking okay this year, and he's probably steps ahead of where I thought he'd be at this point. Larry Nance, again, the worry I have with him when everyone's playing, like the minutes just aren't there. 20 minutes, 6 and 7. Now, if Kevin Love gets traded, he's going to vault back up, but when everyone's ready to go, the minutes just aren't there, and we have seen this time and time again. This is not good enough to be a 12-team league guy, but you're just hoping that a Kevin Love deal gets done in the next 2 or 3 weeks. That's really what you're banking on here. Tristan Thompson, 17 and 11 in 36 minutes, while we also got 9 minutes of the Muppet John Henson. That backcourt is never going to work together, I don't think. The Padawan Colin Sexton, 8 points on 14 shots, while Darius Garland had 9 points on 11 shots. Sexton is a 12-teamer. Garland isn't. He might be later, but I don't think his ceiling's high enough to really hold through all the nonsense. For the Celtics, Gordon Hayward returned, only played 26 minutes, had 14, 5 and 4, and I had literally multiple people ask me today whether Gordon Hayward is an ad as this game was going on, so they knew he was back. So when I throw out and say, ask these questions and see if this is available, dumb shit happens. Of course he is a must-roster player. Of course he is. Go and add him if for some reason he's available. Tatum had 19 and 11. He had 2 steals, 2 blocks and 4 threes, while Kemba had 22 and 7 assists. And Jaylen Brown, they also beat up on a shitful team. 20 and 7 for Jaylen with 2 blocks. He continues to be really good. There was no Marcus Smart in this game, so that does skew a little bit of the usage distribution and minutes there in that backcourt, but those guys are putting up strong numbers. Shemi Ojeleye had 4 steals. You can't rely upon him for anything. He took 1 shot, but those 4 steals are nice, and Vanilla Tice had 3 blocks, but these are weird sort of numbers that go to and fro. Tice has the best value out of all the centers on the Celtics, but that's not saying that he is a 12-team league guy, because he pretty clearly isn't. The next game, the Chicago Bulls, they hosted the Toronto Raptors. They had it in the bag, it looked like, and then, of course, they choked it away late. The Raptors get the win 93-92. Another weird-ass Marc Gasol line. 9 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, 4 blocks. He is contributing in every category apart from points. He actually hit his shots at a better rate. Now, I had him in a podcast earlier today talking about players that you can drop. I had him as one of those guys that you'd consider because I'm not sure the ceiling is there. But those lines, they're really interesting. How it keeps up, I don't think it can keep up at this level, but those numbers are strong. Siakam, 22 and 6. Good from him. The efficiency is still lacking. While the Jedi, OG Anunoby.
Hello there.
Only 10 points. But bringing the defense, 2 steals and 2 blocks, probably still more of a 12-team than a 10-teamer. Stormer Norman Powell started in place of Van Vliet, and he scored well. He had 17 points. He doesn't do a huge amount else usually. The 2 steals are nice, but that value is not going to last long. While Ibaka, the minutes have been really down for Serge since he returned from the ankle injury. Didn't even get 20 minutes here, despite an 11 and 14 double-double. The shots wouldn't go in. And again, a guy I detailed earlier, not a must-roster player in 12-teamers. 11, 7 and 7 for Lowry, a shit ton of minutes as usual. That efficiency was pretty rough, though. Terrence Davis, just 2 points in 12 minutes. A lot of people, with Van Vliet out, do I add Davis? Again, people often just will get... And I'm not calling the people out that asked this, but you'll get really excited about something and just go back and go, well, was Terrence Davis a guy that you were must-rostering in 12-team leagues when Lowry was out? If the answer to that was no, then the answer to this is also no when Van Vliet is out. Like, his value increases, but not enough where you just got to go and scramble to grab Terrence Davis for one game. As for the Bulls, last game, they really reduced Thomas Satoransky. No idea why. He played 38 minutes here, 10 points, 11 assists, 2 steals, must-roster player. Zach LaVine, pretty poor plus-minus as most of the starters did. 20, 11, and 6, a steal and a block. Poor efficiency. Well, a big game from Dan Gafford. He's had a couple of big games this year. 14 and 3 in 20 minutes. 3 blocks and a steal. The problem is the Bulls' best player plays in front of him, and that's going to always limit his minutes. Now, Wendell Carter did foul out in 25, so that enabled more of those minutes for Gafford. If you just go back one game, we saw Luke Cornett play more minutes than Daniel Gafford. Shout out to the thumbhead, Jim Boylan. But it's always interesting to keep an eye on what Gafford does. I think he can be a player in the future. Lauri Markkanen, not his best night, 13 and 8, but he's looking a lot better than what he was not that long ago. While Kobe White has now given us 13 assists in the last 2 games. That is really
A surprise, to be sure, but a welcome one.
Of course, he had 0 points in this one, 0 of 7 from the field, and he's too inconsistent to really roster in a 12-teamer. While Chris Dunn was terrible. 3 points, 1 of 8 shooting. He's just a steal streamer, and then he got no steals. He really, really struggled. Denzel the Hammer Valentine looks much better, and I hope they keep him in the rotation over Chandler Hutchison. He can be a deep league source of 3-pointers if necessary. I don't know why they just won't see what he can do in the starting lineup, but I guess that defense would be a real issue for him. The next game up, we've got the Detroit Pistons and the New Orleans Pelicans. Derrick Rose gets the game winner, 105-103. Rose had 21 points with 7 assists. A really, really strong game from him. He is a 12-team league guy, just with limited upside, but that's strong. Luke Kennard got into some early foul trouble, 14 points in 25 minutes, as did Andre Drummond, who double-doubled in his 25 minutes, 13 and 10. With Kennard struggling with fouls, Langston Galloway played 21 minutes. He had 16 points, 60% shooting. We know that Galloway is the next in line to inherit this title.
Sometimes may be good, sometimes may be shit.
So it is really tough to rely upon him. He's a home run, Hail Mary type points streamer who is not a 12-team league guy. While the Shark, Bruce Brown, Baby Shark, 8 and 7 in his 26 minutes. Let's talk Blake Griffin though. It's real rough. 5 points, 1 of 9 shooting, assists are down. He should never have been expected to be the guy he was last season. Surely none of you expected that. I expect him to be better than he is now, and he is 100% not a drop. Do not drop Blake Griffin, but he looks rough at the moment. The shooting percentages are down, the assists are down, the usage is down. It's a real buy low opportunity for Griffin as long as you are actually executing a buy low. For the Pelicans, they made a change to their starting lineup. Lonzo Ball went down to the bench, as did Jackson Hayes. Charlie Okafor started. He had 4 fouls in the game and only played 22 minutes. Kenrich Williams started. He played 32 minutes. He's not really a fantasy option. As for Lonzo, still played 30, so that's not really that much of an issue. 6, 7, and 4 is okay, but it's absolutely something worth paying attention to see how these minutes roll as things move forward. Redick was bad, 3 points on 10 shots in 21 minutes. I don't believe he's going to remain a must-roster 12-team league guy, while Ingram was great again. Another 5 of 5 from the line, 31 and 6, 4 triples, continues to be excellent this season. As for Jackson Hayes, 13 and 4 in 21 minutes, 2 steals and a block off the bench. Favors' eventual return is going to put a pin in some of his value. Well, Josh the Hitman Hart had 12, 6, and 5. His best game in a while, not a 12-team league player, in my opinion. Holiday had 26 and 5. 0 of 4 from the line is obviously a disaster. He is a better free throw shooter than that, and hopefully we can get that turned around soon, because it is quite frustrating how he's shooting from the line. The next game for us to take a look at, the Sacramento Kings and the Houston Rockets, 119-118. The Kings win it on a Nemanja Bjelica buzzer beater. Richaun Holmes, 16 and 8, 4 steals, 2 blocks. And one thing you should always look at with these Holmes games, how is his usage? Well, under 13%. Marvin Bagley is set to return next game. There are many people who are like, I'm going to drop Holmes, I'm going to sell off on him. Now, if everyone's having this idea that he is a sell high because Bagley's returning, you're not going to get that value back. I don't actually think that's really going to be the case. I don't think that Bagley's coming back and they're just going to say, well, Holmes, you go now and play 18 minutes a night, and we're going to resurrect Edmond, who has been out of the rotation for 2 straight games, and play them together. It's not like he's taking Bagley's shots. He's doing it on efficiency. He's doing it on defensive stats. He got to the line 8 times here, Holmes. You can make an argument that Holmes is a better player than Bagley right now, and I don't think that's too outrageous of a comment. So, unless you are actually getting back good value in a trade, like me trading Richaun Holmes to get Harrison Barnes in a trade is not a sell high. Me trading Richaun Holmes to get back Aaron Gordon in a trade is not a sell high. Me trading Richaun Holmes to get back D'Angelo Russell is. Right, so unless you can do that sort of a trade, then you hold on to him and see what happens. Hayward had 26 and 4 with 6 triples, while Bjelica 17, 5 and 4 with 3 steals. His role is going to be really interesting, Bjelica, to see what happens when Bagley is back next game. The pencil, Harrison Barnes. Barnesy. Good counting stats, 19 and 8, a steal, a block, poor efficiency. Yep, relatively okay. While Trevor Ariza, 8, 5 and 7, 2 steals and a block, a real Marc Gasol type line. His minutes are up at the moment. That is okay, I guess, but he's only a deeper league guy, while Bogdanovic is struggling. 13 points, but encouragingly, he played 32 minutes. The assist opportunities are down. There's a real chance he goes back to a droppable guy at some point. I don't think he's there yet, but there is a chance that happens. While Corey Joseph, 14 points, 6 assists, 2 steals and a block. A well-rounded line from Joseph. He doesn't normally do this. He should be viewed more as an assists streamer. For the Rockets, really strong stuff from Westbrook again. 34, 3 and 8, 2 steals. And his efficiency at the moment is way up. And that is obviously fantastic because he was brutalizing you. Last week, he was going out there and getting 25% type shooting nights. But now we're seeing some of these numbers start to improve, especially today. But that's 2 games in a row with over 50%. And outside of those 2 sub 30% games, in his last 6 games, he's had 4 games of over 50% shooting. And he has not had a game of under 75% from the line in his last 7 contests. In fact, 1 out of his last 15 games, he has gone under 75% from the line. So I don't know to see whether that issue is fixed completely, but it's absolutely trending in the right direction. Jimmy Harden, 27, 4 and 10 with 2 steals, while Benny McLemore continued the good times. 12 points on 13 shots, but 4 threes, 4 assists, and 2 blocks. Even though he went to the bench, he has value. Now, it does help in this one that both Austin Rivers and Eric Gordon were out. So, while I think he's more of a 14-team league guy, this sort of performance is a 12-teamer. Another odd PJ Tucker game, 10 points with 19 boards. That's weird. While Clint Capella had 13 and 17, and Danny House in the starting lineup, 11 points, 3 triples in 34 minutes. I would still rather have House than have McLemore on my team at this point. The next game that we're going to take a look at, the Orlando Magic and the Milwaukee Bucks. The Bucks get the win 110-101. At least the Magic kept it close to get some of these minutes up for the Bucks players. Fournier's good run continues, 26 with 4 triples in 32 minutes. He is a sell-high guy. Well, Johnny Isaac had 3 blocks in 4 minutes, ended with 5 blocks, 10 and 9. His offensive efficiency and usage is well down. That might actually make him a buy low if people are ignoring that blocks column. Terry Ross putting up some good numbers until Vucevic is back at the very least. 23 with 4 triples in 31 minutes. While Markelle Fultz couldn't hit his shots from the field, but strong from the line, 13, 5 and 9 in 30 minutes. And Aaron Gordon, he was bad as well, 10 and 13 with a 1-1. At least he added some peripherals there. Gordo. Mo Bamba hurt his knee, but returned to the game. 2 points and 2 blocks, a blocks streamer only, while Kem Birch gets all those minutes and does very little with them. He also had 2 blocks, but more of a 14-team league guy. For the Bucks, Giannis Antetokounmpo, 32, 15 and 8, 2 threes, a steal and a block, but still absolutely atrocious from the free throw line, while Chris Middleton, 20 and 9 with 4 assists in 29 minutes. The minutes still aren't back fully for Middleton, but that production is really strong, while Bledsoe only had 6 points, but 8 rebounds, 8 assists and 2 blocks gives you some value there. DiVincenzo, I thought, played well, but there just aren't enough minutes to go around for him, with Wes Matthews and George Hill and Paddy Connaughton and Kyle Korver all taking that role. While Brook Lopez, it was, I think, foolish to expect him to do what he did last season. He has dropped off even more than I expected. 9 points with 3 threes. He still is a 12-team must-roster guy, but the production, we shouldn't be looking at him as any sort of top 50 type player for this season. All right, next game up, we had the Minnesota Timberwolves and, not the Minnesota Timberwolves. This was the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Utah Jazz. The Jazz lose at home, 104-90. This was the Thunder team without the Italian cock, the rooster, Danilo Gallinari.
Hands up, my cock!
So this is a terrible loss for the Jazz at home. Abdul Nadir and Darius Bazley were starting for the Thunder. Now, Bazley had just 2 points in 26 minutes with 7 rebounds, so obviously not a big fantasy night, where Nadir had 10 points, 2 triples, 2 steals, and a block. Solid enough from Abdul in this game, but again, more of a deeper league guy until at least Terrence Ferguson returns. Schroeder was great, 27 in 31 minutes, but Steven Adams, he was shit to begin the season, and he still seems to be a little bit limited in terms of playing time, but the production has gone sky high. Efficiency up from the field and from the line. He was 4 of 4 from the field here, 3 of 4 from the line. His block rate is so much better than last season. His assist rate has jumped significantly. 11 and 13, 4 assists and 4 blocks is massive from Steven Adams. Chris Paul was great as well, 16, 4 and 7 with 3 steals. While Gilgeous-Alexander still got his 20 points, had 6 boards and 3 assists, but the efficiency continues to be a worry. Nerlens Noel, he does what he does, gets a steal and a block, but added 4 assists, so that is definitely
a surprise, to be sure, but a welcome one.
On to the Jazz. Joe Ingles looks a lot better playing alongside Rudy Gobert. 9, 4 and 8, 3 steals and 3 threes. Now, whether that continues when Mike Conley returns remains to be seen, but it's worth at least grabbing Ingles to see what happens when Conley is back. Gobert had 19 and 17 on 90% shooting, while Don Mitchell had 26 and 6, but this Jazz team is really struggling. Bojan Bogdanovic, I said that he might have been a bit of a sell high guy a while ago when that shooting was red hot. It's not at the moment. 24% shooting, 13-5, and this is the worry with him. He has peaks and troughs. He's another one of those real like CJ McCollum, the guy that you sell high, then you buy low, and you try and extract value that way. George Niang had a okay night, 7 points in 19 minutes, while Emmanuel Mudiay was terrible. Royce O'Neal went scoreless and missed all 6 of his shots. Dante Exum can't really get anything going. There are a lot of question marks with this Jazz team, and they are struggling to put it all together at the moment. The next one was a big win by the Suns at home against the Timberwolves, 109-125. Townsy had 33 and 15, great from him, while Wiggins had 23, 4 and 4, had 2 blocks and shot the ball well from the line. Great night from Wiggins as well. While Jeff Teague, 28 minutes for Jeff.
My name is Jeff.
16, 3 and 4 with 2 steals. Now, I can see him trending away from being a 12-team league guy, but for now, he is a 12-team league player. Jarrett Culver still really struggling, 15 minutes, 5 fouls. 6 points, 6 rebounds, poor percentage from the line. Again, better than usual, but poor there. He's more of a 14-team than a 12-team guy, and if you do have him in a 12-team league, it's just because you're banking on him continuing to improve. I'm not so sure how we're going to get there. Okogie started, 8 points, 2 steals. He is more of a Chris Dunn type steals streamer than a must-roster 12-team league guy despite starting. Well, it doesn't get much worse than this was for Covington. 4 points, 26 minutes for Bob Cove, 2 rebounds. I think he's done as a 34-minute-a-night player that used to be that top 40 type fantasy guy. They're still getting good steals and blocks most nights, but the worry for me is just why they won't extend his minutes. Is the knee just that bung? Is it wrecked? Like, what's going on with his knee? Why are we getting such off nights from Covington so consistently? He's not a drop, but it is obviously a real worry. This might be a buy low moment, but how buy low is it? Again, it's like Myles Turner. Like, yes, he's at a bad level, but he's not getting back to that guy that he was before, I don't believe. Anyway, so there are significant concerns there. I tell you who is getting back to the levels that we did like in the past, and that's McCall Bridges. 32 minutes, 9 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, and 2 blocks. Loved him last year, like him long-term still, but Monty Williams hated him to start this season. We are seeing the minutes push back up for him. Frank Kaminsky played only 10 minutes. Czech Diallo played only 4 minutes with Aaron Baines back. They went smaller a lot here, and that benefited Bridges. I'm in a 14-team league, I take a flyer on McCall because he is starting to play really, really well at the moment. Booker had 26, 4 and 7, and ravishing Rick Rubio is crushing it. I don't really think that Rubio is going to be impacted when Ayton comes back. If he is impacted, maybe it's in a positive way. He had 16, 4 and 14, continues to be absolutely dominant with the ball, while Šarić had 20 and 9. Now, he's a guy that is going to be impacted when Ayton returns. As for Baines, played well in his limited minutes, but we're only three games away from DeAndre returning, and that's going to put a real pin in Baines' numbers. Oubre was strong here, 24 and 4. The defensive numbers lacked, but a good shooting night from Oubre, who continues to play well, while Cam Johnson did his thing and hit his 2 triples. Kaminsky he had 4 fouls in 10 minutes. That sort of limited his playing time, but they did go small quite a bit here, while Ty Jerome was not ideal in this one. 1 rebound in 15 minutes. How they work these minutes out is going to be interesting, but I'm really, really impressed with Bridges, what we've seen recently, and hopefully we can see him push into a larger role as the season goes on and he continues to have some fantasy value. I'm not a 12-teamer just yet, but at least pushing into 14-team league level value. And then on to the last game of the night. The Memphis Grizzlies go into Golden State and get a victory, 110-102. Ja Morant was back for Memphis and it was like he never left. 26 and 7 with 3 threes. He shot 57%. His efficiency is way above where I would thought it would be at this point. And he looks set for a massive, massive season and a pretty strong career. While Dillon Brooks was good in this game, he'd been poor in the last couple. 17 points in 31 minutes, 3 threes and 2 steals. More of a 14 or maybe even 16-team league guy. Triple J, Jaren Jackson Jr., he did have some foul trouble, but played 29 minutes, 16 points, 2 triples, 3 blocks. He's starting to realise at least some of that potential we saw for him in the offseason, while Tyus Jones went back to the bench. The 7 assists, the 111 are still good, but now we should look at him as only a deeper league guy. Grayson Allen was playing really well, but he hurt his ankle. 15 points with 3 threes in his 12 minutes. I thought there was a chance he could supplant Brooks at some point this season, but consistent ankle problems look like they're going to be an issue. While Jonas Valanciunas, 13, 10, and 4. Not the big games that he was having before, but that's still pretty solid. D'Anthony Melton also still played 17 minutes, taking a lot of the Marco Guterich minutes. It did help that Kyle Anderson was out, so we'll see where Melton fits into that rotation when he is back, but that's still just a deeper league type of play. While Jay Crowder was ill before the game, still played 30 minutes, but had 2 points on 6 shots, not a 12-team league guy, as we've discussed plenty of times. For the Warriors, Alec Burks remained off the bench, but remained really good. 18, 7 and 6, 2 threes, 30 minutes. He is a guy I think has 12-team value. I'm not so convinced about the triangle Eric Paschall. He wasn't great in this game, only 21 minutes. It wasn't a foul trouble issue. 5 and 2, 2 of 10 shooting. And the problems we have with a guy like this is that it's so reliant, or his value is so reliant on these weirdly high usage and high free throw games. And when players like D'Angelo Russell come back and Draymond Green come back, and then when Paschall has a bad night, then everything seems to go away. He still is a 12-team league guy. I'm not convinced it's going to stick for the rest of the season. I think we can drop Kevon Looney in 12-teamers. He'll be better than this, but he's shit at the moment, and the upside is not high enough to hold on. 10 minutes. Jesus, I wish he had 10 points. 0 points in 10 minutes, while D'Angelo had 18, 3 and 7 with 4 triples, and most importantly, played 34 minutes. He took 22 shots as well. Only hit 6 of them, but the fact that he was in there playing those big minutes is encouraging. And Draymond, who Steve Kerr said he was going to be on a 27-minute limit, played 33 minutes, 16, 3 and 5, 1 steal, 3 blocks. That is fantastic for Draymond. For all of you who are asking me, what do I do with Draymond? There was nothing you can do. You held, and now you're probably rubbing your dick, and you're getting pretty excited about that sort of performance. Now, will it stick at this sort of level? Probably not. But it's encouraging to see that minutes restriction did get lifted and he played more minutes. So really, really strong stuff. Cauley Stein, 17 and 8 with 2 blocks. His block rate continues to be really, really high. One of his better games this season. I still don't think he's a 12-team must-roster guy. More of a 14-team league player. But, of course, this performance is a 12-team league performance. But prior to that, he hadn't been at this level. Of course, Glenn Robinson III, one of the most up-and-down players in the NBA. 4 points with 3 steals and 8 boards. A 14 to 16-team league guy. While the lubricant Kai Bowman, his run as a 12-team league guy is done. Obviously, 14 teams done as well. Jacob Evans returned from a long groin injury. He played 11 minutes. I don't really see him being much of a fantasy option, but interestingly, he played 11 minutes while the swimmer Jordan Poole completely out of the rotation. This was a bloke that was starting earlier on. He is out of the rotation now with Evans back, so that is something that is worth mentioning. Injury-wise, I think we got out of today pretty much unscathed. Danilo Gallinari didn't play with an ankle problem, and then late Grayson Allen hurt his ankle, but otherwise not a huge amount happening with injury stuff, which is always a good sign. And now we move on to DFS for Tuesday. There is only 4 games. We're going to be looking at it from a DraftKings point of view. All right, the first game we look at here, DraftKings pricing, is the Washington Wizards and the Charlotte Hornets in Charlotte. The Wizards are 1.5 point favorites on the road, pretty wild, and the total is 232 points. Marvin Williams is doubtful for the Hornets, while for Washington, Isaiah Thomas is out, probably helps their defense, gives more minutes to Ish Smith. In that case, of course, the tank Tom Bryant also out for the Wizards. For your point guards, Rozier's at 7,400, an off night for Terry the game before, but he's averaging 35 over the last 5 games, and given the defensive matchup, I really like this one for Rozier. As for Ish, he's at 52. He is a strong option as well, given the fact that Thomas is sidelined, while Devontae Graham is all the way up at 8,400. That might be pushing it a little bit too much. The only reason that I'd really even consider going for it is given the opposition and the Wizards, but because Thomas is out, that does strengthen their point guard defense up a little bit. 8,400 is just a little bit of a whack that I'm not 100% willing to take. At shooting guard, I am willing to take it with Bradley Beal, 9,300. Been quite a little bit down. The shot has not been there for Beal the last couple, but his last 3 games against Charlotte, 53-point average. If you get 53 here, you'd absolutely take that. While Troy Brown had a monster last time out, they've bumped his salary up to $5,000. That is too high for a bloke that is inconsistent. That 39-pointer he had last game really feels upper end, and I don't have even confidence of that as a ceiling type number. Miles Bridges is at 51. Last game played 38 minutes, had 30 points. That's pretty good for 5,100. I like him as a GPP guy here. Davis Bertans at 63. Strong floor value, lower score of 31 over his last 5 games. Kid Gilchrist at 33 should get some minutes with Marvin Williams likely out and Nick Batum seemingly excised from the rotation. Isaac Bonga has been starting. He had 2 points last game, so I think you can forget about him. For the bigs, Flaming Mo Wagner. He was really poor last time out against the Clippers, just 15 points in 18 minutes. He can be better than that. It is a really strong matchup. We've seen centers go off against Charlotte. I'm happy to get back on the Wagner bandwagon, but at $6,000, it probably is just for tournaments, while Paul Washington Jr. is at 59. He sprained his ankle last game. ready to go here. He's probable to play, so I do like him at that sort of a salary. Zala's at 46, who's been sort of around that mark most nights. So I think we can have a look at him with limited upside as not a bad cash center. Biyombo continues to start. Yeah, not loving that more than a tournament option, while Rui Hachimura at 65, just a shit ton of minutes. It's giving him 30 a night, so a really decent floor cash value. There is some tournament upside for Hachimura, but it probably has more value in a tournament type setting. The next game on the slate, we're looking at the Denver Nuggets and the Philadelphia 76ers. The total here is 206, so really, really low. The Sixers are 4-point favourites. Josh Richardson is questionable. If he is out, you get more minutes for Korkmaz, Ennis, and of course the painter Matisse Thybulle. For the Nuggets, no injuries to report. At point guard, Benny Simmons is at 7,900. He is averaging 47 over the last 5, so he is really cranking that number out. So I do like Simmons here at that spot. Will Barton is struggling. I think that we're looking at Barton and Jokic as being a little bit negatively correlated in terms of usage. So if one guy's in, one guy's out of lineups, that's the way I'd look at that. Barton is more of a tournament guy here whose shot hasn't quite been there. While the Blue Arrow, Jamal Murray's at 6,700. It just feels a little bit on the expensive side. Monty Morris, Malik Beasley, they're not working for me. Joshie Richardson's at 57. If he plays, I think there's real value in him exceeding that number. He'd been putting up some pretty strong numbers before the injury. 5,700 is cheap for Josh. More of a tournament guy than anything else. While the painter Matisse Thybulle had 36 points, he's at 4,300. Again, only a spot I think if Richardson is sidelined. Small forwards, Toby Harris, 7,000. I really like it if Richardson's out. A massively strong floor play. Not sure about the total ceiling, but some good floor value there for Toby Harris. And then for the big men, Embiid's at 9,500. Hasn't quite been where we've needed him the last couple of games, but the matchup is decently solid. While Horford at 66, you can find better options at 6,600. At this point, while Big Chungus Nikola Jokic is at 9,000, over 30% usage the last 2 games. His last 3 games against Philadelphia, he's averaged 66 DraftKings points. Obviously, that's fantastic. He's obviously not at that level this year, but only for tournaments we can look at him. Millsap, Grant, Plumlee, really hard to get excited about any of that trio of big men. The Atlanta Hawks and the Miami Heat, no spread at this point. Justice Winslow and the Iron Shoulder Goran Dragic are out, while Bam Bam Adebayo is listed as questionable with his groin issue that he is dealing with. For the Hawks, Trae Young is probable, John Collins is suspended, and Alex Len is probable as well. Kendrick Nunn at 5,400. He gets a reprieve with Winslow and Dragic out, so I think there's value in a really, really strong matchup for Nunn here. He's got some juice in this one, while Trae Young's all the way up at 10,400. And with how Young is playing, he actually has cash value at that number. I'm not sure there's a tournament value, but there is cash value. Bembry looks to be on the outs of the rotation, while Cam Reddish is just not a guy we can rely on. Jim Butler's at 9,100. I would smash the absolute shite out of that one. That is a low number, and against this defense, he could be a 60-point type of player here. Love it. While Tyler Hero's all the way up at 5,900. Now, Hero does get an extra opportunity, more minutes, more usage with Winslow and Dragic out, but it's a pretty decent chunk of change that you've got to spend up. The matchup is fantastic for Hero. Only really tournaments I look at him. Vanderpants Kevin Huerter's at 4,400. You're not super interested in him, same as Dunk Robinson, who can provide standard league value, but for DFS, he's not quite there. Derek Jones Jr., there could be an opportunity for Jonesy at 3,600, almost really down at minimum salary. If he gets those defensive numbers cranking, it's going to work. If he can get the minutes, the defensive matchup works in his favor. I'm not super into it, but at least as a cheap guy, there's some upside. Well, DeAndre Hunter's at 44. I think he's more of a low-end cash guy than any sort of upside type of a player. Jabari's at 6,200. I think the downside there outweighs the upside. And then we look at the big men spots. Kelly Olynyk's at 4,100. If Adebayo is out, I'm all about Olynyk at that sort of a salary. That also helps Jones if Adebayo happens to be sidelined. Bam's at 8,200. I think he'll play, and I think he'll smash through the 40-point mark. So I really like Adebayo in this matchup if he's ready to go. Well, Damo Jones is at 47. Again, like Robinson that I mentioned before, he does work better in a seasonal-type fantasy league versus a DFS-type format. The last game of the day, the Knicks and the Blazers. The Blazers are favored by 9. The total is 218.5 points. Mike Miller has said that Frank Ntilikina will remain the starting point guard. They're probably still going to use the 3 point guards, Smith and Ntilikina and Payton, really limiting the value and upside play of any of those guys. At point guard, Peyton is at 4,200. He had 31 in 17 minutes, which is obviously a really high level and unlikely to get back to that number. But at 4,200, I still think he has some value here. RJ Barrett's at 55. He played well last time out against Indiana. I like the price for Barrett. This format suits him. While Lillard's at 88, he should be able to crush against this Knicks team. McCollum's at 71. Actually like that as well. Strong floor number. While Simons played 23 minutes and he fouled out. So there's a chance he could have played more minutes last time with Hood out. He doesn't really put up the big numbers. His highest score in his last 5 is just 22 points. But there is some GPP value there. Not for Ntilikina and not for Smith. Not keen on those guys. Bazemore's at 5,000. Yeah, maybe for a tournament. They have bumped him up by 1,200 points. The Knicks matchup makes me a little bit more interested in him, but I'm not super sold there. And then you move on to some small forward types like Melo at 5,600. Melo at that price, I think you have to use him in a cash spot. The shooting hasn't been there, but he's still giving you those numbers, and the matchup's good. While 53 for Marcus Morris, also a super strong floor play. Really like that for cash. Kevin Knox and Mario Hezonja, no thank you. For the big men, Randall's at 64. I love that price for him. The matchup is pretty good as well. Big men have done fairly well against Portland all season, so I like that. While Mitchie Robinson at 5,700.
And Mitch Robinson says, I'll take it from here.
This bloke is averaging 33 points a game over the last 3 games. The minutes are up. That price is up, but not enough. And the matchup is super good going up against Hassan Whiteside.
The world.
So I'm all about Mitch in this one. As for Whiteside at 8,000, yeah, I think it's a pretty strong play for him as well. So he can be a cash and tournament guy. Also, Bob Porter, Skal Labissiere, Taj Gibson. Hard to really get your excitement levels raised for those blokes. If we flip it over to FanDuel, I like Hero over there, Rozier, Ish Smith. I think Nunn, Wagner, Derek Jones, Biyombo. There's some value in those guys. Bridges, Hachimura, Jim Butler, Beal, Simons got that upside play. Bertans, Devontae comes in a lot better on FanDuel than DraftKings as well. And of course, Hassan Whiteside looks pretty good over there. That'll do it for today's show, guys. Make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. You never miss one of the mini shows that we're doing. We're cranking out 11 shows a week over on this channel. So if you subscribe, hit the bell on YouTube so you never miss an episode. Give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you don't think. Hey, tell me whatever you want in the comments and on Twitter at @redrock_bball. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Andrew Harrison.